Hey everybody, welcome to the Church Kids podcast. So thankful that you could join us in whatever streaming option you're watching or listening to this on. Thanks for joining us here on the Church Kids podcast. We hope that you'll like, share, subscribe this on whatever social media or on iTunes podcast or on Podbean. Make sure you share, subscribe. We're so happy that you're here with us today. Here at Church Kids, we are striving to create conversation and community for all through sharing stories. So again, so thankful that you're wanting to be a part of the Church Kids community. And today is a special day because we're starting the first of what's going to be many what we call Church Kids Sessions podcasts, which are going to be a one-on-one conversation between myself and a guest and maybe even some other hosts and a guest, just talking about really specific topics. And today we're going to be talking about church planning. So this episode is really, if you're considering church planning or if you want to know more about what it's like to church plant and where you're church planting. If you have any questions at all, or you're just interested, this is going to be for you. So today I have here with me a great friend of mine, Heath Midkiff.
Hello, hello.
Thank you so much for being here with me, man. I really, really appreciate it. So if you don't know me, I'm Alex Langham. I am the host of Church Kids. We hope that you'll go back and listen to some of the earlier episodes of the podcast, and also Heath is here with me. So me and Heath are a part of the same organization and the same church. We're both a part of Circle Church, Boston. So Heath, tell me a little bit about your journey in being a part of Circle Church. We're here in Watertown, actually, so we're just outside of Boston.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know how far back you want me to go, but essentially, long story short, I grew up in Arizona, many moons from here, and my wife and I moved back. I moved here about 7 years ago, 2010, because I met my wife online. In a chat room.
Right on, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What year was that?
It was 2007.
Chat rooms.
2007. Chat rooms were a thing.
I love it.
AOL Instant Messenger was still around.
But it worked though.
It worked. It was.
There's hope for those of you on Christian Mingle. There is hope.
There is hope. I am living testament to it.
So how many years have you and your wife been married?
We've been married just short of 6. It'll be 6 in April.
That's
We've
amazing.
been together though. We just celebrated. On February 5th, we celebrated 11 years together total.
That's awesome. And Heath's wife, Nicole, is amazing. Shout out to Nicole. I love you.
She's amazing.
She made fun of me for buying these glasses last week, so I just wanted to really put that out there. But anyway, we love Nicole. We love Nicole. Heath especially.
I especially love Nicole. And so anyway, Nicole and I moved back to Arizona in 2015 for a year, just kind of get like a refresh and a restart on what was next for us. And while we were there, right before we knew we were moving back, so we've moved cross country twice in the last 3 years. While we were there, we knew we were moving back to Massachusetts, which is where she grew up. We found out about Circle Church. They were planting in Watertown, which is her hometown, and just randomly, we were watching a different church's live broadcast of their Sunday morning, and the pastors stood up, and they were there, and they got introduced, and we were like, well, we definitely, when we go back, let's check that church out. And so we went first Sunday, I think it was in October. It was, I think, a couple Sundays after they had initially launched the church. And we just fell in love with the people, fell in love with the vision of Circle Church and the community. Nowhere else, I've never been a part of any other church that has had such a high, put such a high importance on community. And so it just felt like walking into my best friend's house or a family member's house, and you were just at ease, you were comforted, you felt at home. It was great. It was a great feeling. So.
Right, and we really are best friends now, which is amazing.
Yes, for sure.
It's cool that our church and many churches really create that home for people. And I think the church planning is really interesting. And maybe you can speak to it differently than I can because you weren't necessarily called to be a part of a church plant. You were already living in New England, and you happened to see this church. And, I don't know if you knew at the time. Did you know going into Circle Church that it was, fresh and a new thing? Or were you kind of surprised when you walked in that it was, we'd only been going for a few months?
No, I knew it was a plant because the other church had said during their live broadcast, they said, it's a new church. It was before you had officially started. I think 2 Sundays before you launched or something like that. And so we knew it was a plant, but again, we never anticipated to get involved at the level we were at. We didn't come here. We didn't come back for the church. We didn't come back, knowing we're going to get involved in a church plant or even wanting to be involved in a church plant. we simply just checked it out and fell in love with it and started coming. And then throughout like the weeks and months, we just got more and more and more involved.
Right. That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the way our church is set up, because there's many different ways that churches church plant, many different ways that churches, have Sunday services. Even churches that have been around for a while still look a little bit like ours, and maybe if they're multi-site, they are still portable. So we're going to talk a little bit about the way that our church looks on a Sunday morning and throughout the week. So we rent, as what I'm assuming most churches do right out of the gate, is we rent a theater and a facility, and we rent it on Sunday mornings, and throughout the week we don't really necessarily have a space to call ours. So our experience with church planting so far, a year and a half plus minus in, is we arrive at 7 a.m. Or at some point it was 6:30 a.m., but we arrive for a 10 a.m. service at 7. We have to unload the trailer after we've picked the trailer up, sometimes in the snow. And we bring it to the venue and we unload and we load everything in and we do church, and then right after church we have a few minutes of connection and we tear it back down, and then we load the trailer up and put the trailer away for the rest of the week. And then, if we're having a small group, or what we call them circles at Circle Church, but that's all, around the city in homes and things like that. We don't have a midweek service because we don't own a facility. So that's really what our church looks like. And have you ever been a part of a church that was portable like that? Maybe you can speak to some of the challenges that come with that, or just what your experience has been with our church, with Circle Church, as a church plant, and maybe how that looks different than your traditional established church.
Yeah. I mean, so I've never, in my past, I've never been involved with a portable church. Right. I've only gone to... well, you can slap this title on it, brick and mortar churches, where they have their own building, they have their own setup. So coming into it was new. I didn't know what to expect, and once I got involved, it really opened your eyes to how much work got put into behind the scenes to make church happen every Sunday. The team there is so dedicated to making sure it happens. But I mean, obviously, the obvious differences is that, like Alex kind of referenced, we don't have a place of our own. We don't have midweek services. We really heavily rely on circles to carry our church throughout the week. Right. And I think in a way that actually helps build our sense of community at the church, because that's the way for people to connect. They don't have another option to connect really with the church outside of Sunday mornings right now. So they meet through circles and they build their little communities, and then they come in and they become even a bigger part of a community, a larger community on Sunday mornings. So that's kind of unique about our church, is that we rely so heavily on those, because without that community throughout the week, I feel like we wouldn't have necessarily the draw that we have on Sunday mornings.
Same thing with me. So I grew up in what you have called a brick and mortar church, established church. The church that I was a part of growing up had been there for, over 10 years, already had a building and things like that. And, I spent, I think, 14 years at that church, so most of my childhood and youth years. And it was special, and I think that there's so much to glean from when it comes to churches that have been established, because that was my hangout spot. I would go to the church, and that's kind of where the title church kid comes from, and I was just there and around, and we had a spot to be. It was a great opportunity, especially for people at my age at the time and students. I wasn't out getting into trouble, but I was actually causing trouble just at the church and surrounded by great people. And so it's unique, because as a portable church or as a church plant, and we'll get more into this, but even as a church plant, you don't already have the systems or the community built yet, and it takes intentionality to do all that. But what you're saying, basically, that I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it takes intentionality as a church plant to provide that community for people, which we've done through circles. And if you're thinking about church planting, I think it's so important to provide and be intentional from the get-go about having a culture that's going to provide people community outside of a Sunday morning, especially if you're portable. Was that something you'd say? Yeah,
for sure. I think it's essential. A portable church, I don't think can survive necessarily without that opportunity to connect outside of Sunday mornings, just because it's such a limited amount of time on Sunday mornings, usually based on the tight turnarounds that we have to get in and get out. of the theater that we're meeting at. So, I think it's very important.
So you've been serving at our church since January of 2016, right?
Yeah, so January 2016 is when, January 2017.
2017.
Yeah.
So you've been there
We
for
launched September
a
2016.
little over a year serving and being a part, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit about what you do for our church and let our listeners know kind of what it is you do on a Sunday morning and throughout the week.
Yeah, so me and my wife, when we first started getting involved in the leadership at the church, we started, like Alex said, January 2017. We started as the circle coordinators. So at Circle Church, our coordinating team, our coordinators, are basically they would be the ones that would be paid staff at a church or paid pastors at a church if we had the budget and the finances for that.
Yeah.
So
another part of church planning where
right.
finances aren't always there to do necessarily traditional things. Great parts of it. And I think it actually, sorry to cut you off here, but I think it teaches, especially those of us that are, volunteer staff, it really teaches us to remind us, man, we want to do ministry. I love doing ministry, but it's not in any way about the money.
Exactly.
Some of us have been serving in it for a year, almost a year and a half, and never gotten, paid a dime. But it's really trained our hearts to be like, ministry people are the point of this. Right. Money's never the point of this. So just saying that's an amazing part that comes with church planning, actually.
For sure. Yeah, it does. Church planning makes you want it. Yeah. Because you're not gonna stick around if you don't really want to be in ministry, just because materialistic rewards are very low, but spiritual rewards can be very high.
Absolutely.
So that has to be your main goal in order to be there. But so we got involved in January 2017 as the circle coordinators, and it was Nicole and I's job to launch circles. So this is, the church has been around for 4 months or three or 4 months at this time. I can't do math on the fly. I apologize to everyone. So anyway, we wanted to get circles off the ground. And Nicole and I had experience in Arizona. We had started a small group in Arizona, kind of independent from any church, because we knew we wanted to do married couples, young married couples. We wanted to have fellowship. So we got a bunch of people from different churches together for just an independent small group. We launched that fresh off the ground at our house. And so we had a little bit of experience on what it takes to launch and what kind of what you need behind it in order to make it take off from the ground. So we got involved and we started January kind of thinking about what we wanted to do. So second week in January, actually I think it was the first week in February technically, we launched our circles for the first season, and we had 6 circles. That launched. And so part of our job was to recruit those 6 leaders. Well, we were one, so recruit 5 leaders to take over and start a circle. And so we trained, leaders and got them set up to go forward and lead a circle. So that was our first kind of thing. We did that, 1 season, 2 seasons, about October of 2017, sorry. October 2017.
Can't roll that date over yet, that year.
I know, just
still writing 17 on
always so far off.
Right.
October 2017, I was approached to become the campus director at Circle Church, awesome. Boston. And so essentially what my job became, so Nicole continued as a circle coordinator. My job became being a leader of leaders. So leading the coordinators that had specific roles on Sunday mornings. So Alex is the experience coordinator at the church, and so I would lead Alex in making sure that he had everything he needed to make sure his area was set up and ran smoothly. That's right. And there was I believe 3 other departments on Sunday mornings that was in charge of making sure that everything was running smoothly.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's part of the reason that I wanted Heath to come on and talk about this with me, is because he's been such a quality leader, and he's gotten to see a lot of the ins and outs of church planning. And has a lot of insight that maybe others might not have. So again, man, thank you so much for being here on the podcast today.
Thanks
the
for
first question that I want to start out with, and I think I know I will know your answer, but maybe not. I want to ask what your favorite story from church planning has been, I'll save what I think it is until after you tell your story. But your favorite story, or maybe your most the most agitating story. Would love to hear your experience.
There's too many to pick from. So one thing is that because we meet in a theater, there's one proponent that we don't have control over, and that is the stage design. So
right.
when there's plays that come in from these traveling acting troupes. They come in and they set up the stage, and they're elaborate designs. They're great. Everything looks wonderful. It's like engaging, but you just have no control over what might be on the stage. And so I remember, one time coming in, and there on the ground was a giant swastika because they were huge.
The whole stage.
And, we were like, well, that's inappropriate, and we can't have this showing on a Sunday morning. And so we had to get really creative and get a rug, I think, and cover it up.
Right, yeah.
And so you basically could see the edges of it, but you couldn't tell what it was when the rug was in place.
And in context, I'm sure the play was hilarious or good or whatever with the swastika, but out of context on a church Sunday morning, it was like standing on a...
No, you couldn't.
It would have been completely inappropriate.
And there's been other things like that. Like we've walked in on during Christmas before, and the stage was set up in a post-apocalyptic world where everything was in ruins.
Looked like a bomb went off.
And you're here you are telling the story of Jesus being born, and actually it's kind of a sweet irony there. He was born into a really messy world. It worked. We made it work. We spun it. Can't even talk English. We spun it in a way that made it work.
Yeah.
But there's definitely different stories like that. And then outside of that, there's stories that just about the struggle is real.
Yes.
To get there on Sunday mornings.
So one thing that I guess that we could share that we've learned in some of these stories before he tells this other one is that in church planning, and this is kind of a prerequisite, is you have to be ready to work with what you've got. Financially, venue-wise, with your people. Now, you want to build the right people and you want to build culture, but really, the people that you have available from the get-go are going to be, the only vessels that you have. So build the people that you do have in front of you. But yeah, you really do have to work with what you got sometimes. I'd love to hear about one of the stories of struggle on maybe a Sunday morning.
There's been several. You just have to be really creative, right. at times on Sundays. But, there's been, New England, we're famous for, getting these huge snowstorms.
Right.
I would say overall we probably don't get the most snow in the United States or anything like that, but we do get some pretty nasty storms from time to time. And I remember this one particular storm that hit. And we used to store the trailer at a storage facility, and instead of them plowing us out, they plowed us in. And so we show up at 6 a.m. and to a mountain of snow in front of our trailer, and there's no way we're going to be able to shovel through this. It's now ice.
And for those of you that live maybe in a warmer state, don't experience a lot of snow, what the problem is and why you always hear people shoveling their car out is because after a few days it turns to solid ice, and it takes immense effort to get it gone after it's frozen over.
Yeah, a lot of our bigger storms, it snows, and then as soon as the snow goes out, the temperature plummets.
Yeah, and there's rain, so it's just freezing everywhere.
Right, and it just completely turns to blocks of ice. So this was solid ice. We couldn't do anything about it. We couldn't get our trailer out, and so, essentially we called the entire leadership team and said, hey guys, everyone drive your car over.
Yeah.
We're going to just get in the trailer, unlock it, and we're going to pull out just the bare essentials. Whatever we can fit into a car, we're going to fit into a car. We ended up getting set up. I think it was really late. Normally we're set up in the building by 8:30. Well, I think we were set up 9:30 for a 10 o'clock service.
Yeah.
And
it was really pushing the limits.
It was pushing the limits.
Yeah, I think not strategically, but I don't think I was actually in town for this service. And there's another story.
That's debatable whether it was strategic or not, but.
There's another story that actually happened more recently. Heath might not be ready to admit that it was funny at all, but I was traveling at the time, and
just real quick, can you guys notice that Alex is always out of town in these stories when these struggles are happening? I just want everyone to know that.
It's not strategic, I promise. But I was out of town, but I get a Boxster message, which is a great app for church planners or anybody in ministry. I encourage you to use Boxster. But he sent me a Boxster, just a audio chat, and he just says, because I'm in Florida traveling over the holidays, he's like, man, I hope you're enjoying your 85 degrees. Man, I forget exactly what happened, but they did this service, and the service was really tough, and and I think attendance maybe wasn't the best, and then on top of all of it, the icing on the cake was they bring the trailer back to where we store it, and right as they're dropping it off, the bumper literally falls off the truck, right?
Yep. Whole bumper just off the truck.
Good God. Man,
Yeah.
you are a saint for sticking it out. I would have lost my mind. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was definitely difficult. And I think what I said to you was, I hope you're enjoying your 85-degree weather, and I hope you're having a merry flippin' Christmas. Because it was right at Christmas time, and he was out enjoying the beaches of wherever Orlando has beaches, right?
No. Over on the coast, but still, man, it was. It's fun, and the point is, if you're thinking about church planning, that there are gonna be some horror stories. You're gonna have some hard Sundays, but I think that what you learn on those Sundays is how to be ready, for anything. I think we've had numerous Sundays where something has happened, as it seems to always happen, even with established churches, and you just have to be ready to say, essentials only. And for us, people are always the essentials. So it comes down to, we got to do an acoustic worship set, but we can still have the resources to give people coffee. That's what we're doing, and X, Y, and Z, and just remembering that people are the point. You want to have these elaborate and amazing worship experiences, and of course we strive to do that. But things happen, and so I would think that we would encourage people to remember that people are the point when it comes to church planning, and
For sure.
And you want to strive for the best and excellence, but there's going to come days where it's hard, and before you have systems in place and before you have finances to do certain things, where you're just going to have to remember, man, people are the point today.
Yeah.
The next question I want to ask is kind of a hard question. What do you wish someone would have told you before getting into church planning? Now, for me, I kind of jumped into this thing. I was a little more prepared than maybe you were, because I decided to be a part of a church plant, and I decided to move. So I knew it was going to be a leap of faith. But you just kind of stepped into this thing as a normal church, even though we were only a few months old. So we were still kind of suffering with the residuals of man, getting this thing started and struggling with who's going to be a part of the team, who's going to keep coming, who's going to be consistent.
Yeah.
And you just kind of jumped right in and started serving and being a part. So what do you wish somebody would have told you, and maybe what do you wish you could tell some people that are thinking about church planning prior to getting to that point?
Yeah, I think what would have been beneficial is if someone told me, Heath, it's a different animal. It's a different beast altogether. Traditional church is so different than a portable church. And maybe not during the 10 to 12 time frame where you're just doing service. That can definitely feel like a normal church, and it's great. But it's everything leading up to and everything leading after. And just to tell me that, it's going to take more energy than you think you can actually give. It's going to take more, it's just going to take more of you than you can. I think that ultimately it takes more of yourself than you actually are planning to give or even wanting to give to something. As a human, we just definitely there's a lot of times where we're selfish beings, and so we want to hold on to our time and our energy for ourselves. But you can't do that when you church plant.
Right.
All of your time, all of your energy is poured into this organization to make it survive, make it thrive. I mean, there's so much connection that you have to do. You have to be intentional about it in order to make sure that people are coming back. And slowly through growth and things like that, that's how church plants move from being a church plant to a traditional church.
Yeah.
Planted.
Yeah. To being a planted church.
Right.
Okay. So what is the largest lesson that you've learned, maybe personally and also at an organizational level? What's the largest thing that you think through this process you've learned, maybe about yourself or your marriage or whatever? What have you learned in the process of church planning?
I think what I've learned is that I've learned that I can give more than I thought I could give.
Yeah.
Previously, in other things that I've done, I've given just the minimal amount of effort that was required to be successful in whatever the role was,
right,
whether corporately or in ministry.
Right.
And I thought that's all I could give because I was exhausted at that point. I'd be like, I'm done. This is all extra time. I've gone to work 40 hours for my week. I've done, I've been in full-time school the last 3 years trying to finish my bachelor's degree. And so I've done that and that. So anything extra, I was like, well, I'm going to just give the minimal.
Right.
Coming here didn't change. I'm still in full-time school, still doing 40 hours a week, which is debatable if you ask some people if I actually work 40 hours a week. But I've learned, biggest lesson I learned is that when it feels like I can't give any more, there's more to give.
Yeah. And maybe there's something to that we could talk about for a moment, because I've noticed the same thing that, obviously you have school on top of what you're doing, but I also work a 40-hour-a-week job. For me, it's quite a commute. I take the train in and out, so an 8-hour day quickly becomes a 10-hour day. So I'm spending 40 to 50 hours of my week focused on my job, and then another 20 hours plus a week focused on this organization that I came to be a part of. So what would you say about, because obviously we can give and we can pour out, but that comes from somewhere, right? So what have you done and what have you learned about staying filled up, about keeping your jars full and ready to pour out? Talk a little bit about that, about how you stay passionate.
Yeah, I think staying passionate is key, and the way I've done it is that I purposefully set aside time to be poured into.
Right.
So I find
That's great.
I find community. I find, more specifically, I usually will find 2-3 guys that I can really bond with. Alex is one of those 3 guys that I can really bond with, that I spend a lot of time outside of church with, that just they help pour into me. One thing I'm gonna say about Alex, you guys have an awesome person here that's gonna give you amazing content, because this kid, he's 19 and he is as spiritually mature as an 85-year-old. Sometimes he is insanely wise for his age, and so I'm 30, and there have been so many times when Alex has poured into me stuff that I needed to pick me up off the ground. And if it's anything to prove that age is no limit, there's no limiter. You can be however great you want to be and however wise you want to be, depending on the effort you put into your everyday walk. But
thank you for that. That's the Church Kids mission, actually, and I love that you say that, because just as we step aside from this conversation for a moment, wherever you are, whatever your age is, I hope that this can be a testament to you that wherever you are, whether you're old or young, that if you pour yourself into something, if you let God work on something, that you can do more than you think you can do.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the conversation.
For sure. So what was the question again? I think
No. Yeah. We were talking about how you stay passionate. You were just talking about community, and I love that. You've actually been a huge community to me, and we have some other people in our lives too that have really poured into us.
For sure. And that's really the key. So I find community. So what I do is I am a circle leader, so I can create community for others. But I also attend circles. Because I want other leaders to pour into me.
Right. Just
because I'm a leader over those leaders doesn't mean those leaders can't pour back into me. It's not about me being over anybody. We're all on the same level. So I make sure I'm in a circle, and then even outside of that, I try to get 3 core guys together who can really just pour into me and fill me up and keep me going.
Yeah.
And then me and my wife, I'm learning to be better at this, but is learning what fills each other's buckets in marriage, and allowing time for that to happen. So if any of you know my wife Nicole,
brilliant.
She's amazing. She's so much better than
he's getting brownie points.
She's at least 20 times better than I am. I mean, there could be more, but again, told you I'm not really good at math. But but anyway, but what fills her bucket is she likes to be alone. She likes to have alone time. And obviously she's not going to get alone time all the time. We're married. I can't just be like, oh, you can just be alone forever.
Yeah.
But I've realized that it's okay for her to go in her room and just read a book and be alone and get filled that way. Watch a TV show that she likes, something like that.
Right.
Have that time, and that fills her. And then for me too, it's learning what fills my bucket, and then her pouring into me and making sure I have the time to do what I want to do to fill my bucket, and then that way we can be balanced.
So you would say that it's important to, even in this journey, even as you have so much going on, making sure you have that thing that fills your bucket per se, and keeping yourself full.
Yeah.
And sorry to cut you off, but I think it's important too to add that a lot of times it's easy to get so deep in this ministry thing that all you think about is ministry, but stepping aside from that sometimes and just playing a video game with the guys, or reading a book by yourself, or maybe getting together and going shopping with some people, or just getting away from ministry actually is a huge help sometimes to reconnect with yourself, remind yourself while you're in it, and that's great, man. One other thing that I would say is that I think a model that has been taught to us that would work so well, and you're even kind of speaking to it right now, is to live a surrounded life. So living a surrounded life in which you are surrounded by community. But I've always been taught that you should have somebody that you're following, somebody that's following you, and somebody that you're doing life with. So you actually live this life of you are being pushed by the person that's following you, you are being pulled by the person you're following, and you're just being carried by the people that are next to you. Have you noticed that having those three types of relationships benefit? Because you were kind of speaking to, I lead a circle, I go to a circle, which I also do, and I've seen benefits from. What have you seen benefit from that?
Yeah, I know. I just think that it keeps, it helps keep you in a positive mood. One thing that I'm a huge proponent of, going back to the bucket, is that you know when you're your best self, and when you know when you are at your worst. And so it's important to not let you get depleted, because if you let your bucket go dry and it stays dry, that's when burnout happens, and that's when you basically reach a point in your life where you can't continue because you're too empty. So I think you're going to your model is the push, carry, pull. Really having that in your life is so important, because it helps make sure your bucket stays full, or at least filling consistently. So as you're pouring out, it's constantly being refilled. Just kind of how the swimming pool works. It's filled and water pulls out, but water also comes in, so it constantly remains its water level. It's the same kind of concept for humans. Yeah, I think it's so important, especially on the topic of church planting, just remaining full. Maybe we could speak to it, but there are some huge obstacles in church planting spiritually, and obviously practically there's obstacles, but what have been some of the spiritual obstacles of being a part of a church plant? Yeah, I mean, I think some of the spiritual obstacles is time. Yeah. So, there have been stretches of time in my experience that maybe I didn't have the time to do everything that I wanted to do. I didn't have the time to accomplish everything that I wanted to accomplish, and that can really drain you. But it's learning to say that's okay. That you have to be willing to kind of give up control of your time. But if you let time be a factor and let let time get you down, it can be a huge kind of roadblock in your path. I also think that kind of unique to New England, there's been a lot of obstacles unique to New England. Yeah. And I don't know if we're going to get into that later, but... No, we are, but let's talk about it now, actually, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, so some of those blocks are obviously culture. The culture in New England is not necessarily what you would consider church affirming or anything like that, So there's the culture of New England. There is the weather in New England. The weather, yes, it's a very real factor. I mean, you never know when it's going to rain or shine. You never know what the degrees are going to be. Yeah. You don't know when it's going to plummet to hurricane force winds. Right. I think with any coastal city, that kind of just comes with the, storms can blow in at any time. Right. Also, the cost is a huge factor in New England. Cost is huge. I mean, normal church can operate fairly cheap depending on where they are in the country, but New England, especially with being a portable church, is insane. I mean, you're renting, for example, a theater and you're paying thousands of dollars a month just for your building. And that doesn't include anything that you need to make your church successful. It doesn't include any kind of materials. Doesn't include any kind of, it doesn't include anything else. I mean, that's thousands of dollars. Yeah. So you really rely on creating that community of the people and making sure people buy into the vision. Because if people buy into the vision, they're going to be more willing to give of their finances, to fund the church to continue, forth. Yeah, I think that if you are thinking about church planting and you maybe you've thought about New England or a major metropolitan area, I could not encourage you more. I know that it'll build your faith, and I also know that we need it now more than ever.
Boston was just again named, I think, number 2 this time around on the least biblically minded and the least churched city in the nation. And there are 8 of 10 cities on that list that are in New England, which is insane. And
really
I think that it really speaks to why there are so many obstacles here, because I know that whenever the devil doesn't want something to happen, he's going to set up obstacle after obstacle, and he's going to try and weed out the weak. But I have noticed that the more consistent I stay when things get hard, the more faithful that God is on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And I think that if I could encourage anybody that's thinking about church planning, or maybe you are a church planner, maybe you're even further along than us, I just encourage you, you might be hitting a season, keep pushing through, keep on going. Have you seen, benefit from that as well? I know that I have seen benefit from consistency.
Oh, for sure. I mean, consistency it builds, it does a tremendous amount, it does tremendous things, I should say, to just in yourself. It builds your character, it builds your spiritual strength, it builds your spiritual stamina. It really goes a long way in making you a better person all around. Both physically and spiritually, and emotionally. Persistence is key.
That's amazing.
For sure.
I think it was Stephen Furtick. He said the proof of passion is in perseverance, and I think it's just brilliant. I mean, he's already brilliant, but and also a master of planting churches. They're creating an incredible model at Elevation Church, but. He said that the proof of passion is in your perseverance. And I think it's so true. I think God continues to test my passion and really pull out of me. Is ministry, is serving me what you want to do? Will you do it if I don't pay you? Will you do it if people don't show up? Will you do it when it's hard? Will you do it when people leave? And God's been so faithful to teach me that if I stay, God just needs people to stay sometimes. I think we really, push. Obviously, the Great Commission is to go and to tell all the world of the good news of the gospel. But I think that there is so much value in staying. If you've gone, will you stay there and be consistent? I think it's so helpful, and I think it'll build your faith. And there's a time for God to speak and for you to move, and I believe in that. I moved. You've moved many different times in your life, but I think God is so consistent to be faithful to those that are faithful to Him. So if I would just encourage you to stay, if you're kind of thinking about maybe adjusting or making a move or leaving or whatever ministry you're a part of, give it another shot. And give it another shot. I've heard, I think it was Pastor Carl Lentz at Hillsong, New York, who said, give a church the same grace that you want them to give you. And whatever organization you're a part of, just keep giving them grace. And stay faithful. God's going to do something in it. 2 more questions. We'll wrap up. What has God done in you while church planning?
God is kind of revealed through church planning. God's revealed my calling in life. Coming here, even when I moved here in 2016 back to Mass, I just kind of didn't know. I was still kind of unsure what my calling was. I was getting my degree in ministry leadership, wrapping up. I'll graduate this May.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. It's been a long journey, but and I'll have a bachelor's degree in ministry leadership, and I purposely selected ministry leadership because of the more broad applications it can have across the ministry spectrum. But didn't really have a pinpoint direction of what I wanted to do.
Right.
And so. I think what God has really, made clear to me through church planting and through being a leader at Circle Church is that, I think I'm called. He's revealed my calling, so I feel that I'm called to consult churches and consult ministry organizations on how to better their leadership models, as well as, just kind of refine their ministry and their processes and procedures.
Okay.
And also, just given me a heart for a bigger heart for ministry in general, wanting to see ministry succeed, wanting to see the church model we see in the book of Acts come back and be a part of how churches are operating.
Right.
I think is huge.
That's amazing. So your consistency in this church planting season has even further revealed your calling to you, and I've seen that in my own life as well, man. I'm such a big supporter and advocate of the local church. You meet Christians occasionally that say, I can do it. I don't need to go to church. I've got my Bible or whatever. But I have been such an advocate of the local church since day one, because some of the best friends I've ever met in my life have been found in the local church. I've learned how to lead in the local church. I've discovered my purpose and my calling in the local church. And even further, that's even blown up and magnified in church planting. And God will just pull your calling out of you in this process of church planting. He'll test your limits, and it's been so amazing in this process and on this journey. One last question, then we'll start wrapping it up. If you could do it again, obviously neither of us are the pastor of our organization, but maybe in your area, or if you ever planted a church, is there anything that you would change from the model that we did?
Actually, I think that what was, again, going back to Circle Church and what made it unique was such the high importance that the founding pastors put on community at the church, and poured everything they had into building community.
That's right. And
that is I don't see a lot of traditional churches. They just don't have a good community. They have a great Sunday morning. They have a great, they might have small groups, but there's just not that there's not that importance or that resource poured into making sure that community is a part of the big picture overall. Mm-hmm. So I think that if I could do it again, I would use the same model that was put in place, that same vision that was put in place for Circle Church, and making it all about community and community first. God-centered community. I should put it that way, because I'm trying to figure out.
That's great.
God-centered community first, and
we say something at our church very often about having authentic relationships with people, and how that builds the relationships that you build with people actually open doors to have conversations about the gospel in your workplace and so on and so forth. But having that community in your local church is so key. And I'm thankful that I've been a part of a church that has, modeled that. Mm-hmm. And we'll encourage, anybody that's thinking about church planning, really study community in the Bible, study Jesus' relationship with his 12 disciples and how beneficial that was to the ministry. And the reason that, now we have billions of people following Jesus across the globe. So really consider community. I've seen that benefit as well. As our church. As we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts for anybody that's considering church planning, or really anybody watching? What's your final thoughts for them?
So I think my final thoughts are this. And I'll speak specifically to, as Alex kind of said earlier, New England is a huge target area right now for churches and church planting, because of the stronghold that the devil seems to have in this area. So my final thoughts are going to be towards that. So first thing I want to say is, if you're thinking about getting involved in a church plant or starting a church plant here in Boston, I encourage you, one, to research the culture here, research the area here, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Take a visit. Come check us out. If you're ever in the area and you want a tour, let us know.
Yeah, message Church Kids. We'll be happy to have you at Circle Church or connect you with the local church if you're ever interested in visiting New England.
And I think that, one thing to keep a common misconception about New England is that it's all the same. Yeah. That you have seven states, 6 or 7 states.
Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine,
Connecticut.
Yeah.
Okay. And Connecticut might claim that they're half New England, half New York, but we'll call them New England. But honestly, every state is different. Boston is a stronghold for sure, but even if you go outside of Boston and go out to the western part of Massachusetts, it's a completely different world. It's a completely different culture. So just learn the culture for where you're going to plant. Know what's going to be effective for where you're going to plant or where you're going to get involved, because it's not all the same. And it's completely different no matter where you go in New England. So I'd say encourage you guys to do that research, and just, message Church Kids and definitely get more information about what it's like. Gather as many resources as you can, get as many contacts as you can, because you're going to need it. Once you get into the thick of things here, you're going to need people to pour into. You're going to need people to give you advice or talk things through with.
That's right.
and building that community early before you're even here is going to be beneficial down the road.
That's right. And anywhere you're church planting, I would say something that was beneficial to me was to see other churches that did it well. So I encourage you, there's so many churches that are just kind of getting started or are church planting new campuses consistently. Just to name a few, Action Church in Orlando is I think they're going on their 4th year and have 4 campuses, an amazing church. In New England, New Life Church in Providence is, a more established church, but they're planting new campuses and doing amazing new things, and obviously always welcome at Circle Church. And I mean, there are just amazing churches everywhere that we can glean from, learn from, and I think that it's so important what you said, to gather those contacts and resources, not for connection's sake, but for friendship's sake. Yeah. You're going to need it in the long run if you're in this church planting thing, especially for the long run, which I hope that we all are. You're going to need that support, and it's important to have people outside of your church sometimes you need a voice from outside your own house. So totally agree. Yeah. Man, thank you so much for being here with us, Heath. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I'll put his @ somewhere right down here in the bottom corner of the screen, or in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, man. Thank you guys for listening to Church Kids Sessions. We're going to do these once a month. We're also going to be doing our consistent episodes with just myself once a month. Thank you guys for being a part of the Church Kids community. If you want to join the conversation, do me a favor. Go to churchkids.net, click on Join the Conversation, leave us a message. It'll come straight to our email. We would love to talk with you. If you have any questions, I would love to connect with you on there. So would some of our team. If you ever have a topic you want to contribute, or maybe a session you think would be good to talk about, send it there. We would love to explore anything that you guys want to explore with us. And this has been a lot of fun. I look forward to doing more of these interview style podcasts in the future. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube and the podcast on iTunes and Podbean if you're on Android or any other mobile device. Make sure you visit the website. There's some blog posts and content on there we would love for you to check into. And like the page on Facebook. It's just Church Kids, and share this content. We're going to grow this Church Kids community together. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. We're happy you could be here, and we hope you'll listen again soon. We love you guys. Thanks so much for listening.
Peace out.